Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Homotopia live event for In Conversation with Fox Fisher. I'm Sophie Green. Fox is sat next to me here. Hello, Fox.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi. We are in MerseyMade, which is a studio and art space in Liverpool City Centre, and they're hosting us today, so thanks very much to MerseyMade. So I'm with Fox. Fox has been working hard on events throughout the weekend for Homotopia. How have you found Liverpool?
Liverpool is a beautiful city. It's obviously very quiet right now with the whole lockdown situation. I'm just happy to be able to be here for work because I wasn't even sure if we'd have to do this via Zoom, for example.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
no, it's good to have
it's good
you
to be here in the
flesh,
flesh, but
obviously
distance.
with our little invisible barrier here. So I'll do my introduction to you. So I'm going to big you up a little bit now.
Oh, thank you.
The fabulous Fox Fisher is this year's Homotopia Festival's artist in residence, and Fox has been working on a series of events over the weekend, which has been very exciting. Fox is an award-winning artist, a filmmaker, and a trans and non-binary campaigner. And Fox first appeared on our screens in My Transsexual Summer, which was in 2011. Fox then went on to co-create the My Generation film project and has spoken to and archived the lives of over 100 trans people, which is an incredible archive available on YouTube. Fox is also the co-creator of Trans Pride Brighton, which was a bit of a first, and is the co-author and illustrator of 2 books: Are You a Boy, Are You a Girl? And the Trans Teen Survival Guide. Transsexual Summer, My Transsexual Summer, 2011, feels like almost like a lifetime ago, but it's only 9 years ago. Really, and that's like a catalyst for a lot of the work that followed.
Yeah, it really was. That was the very beginning of my medical and social transition, and I took part in this documentary where I was quite shy, I think, and I was just not that confident with myself, and I don't think anyone my partner and my parents, nobody wanted to be part of that show either. So I did it on my own.
Everyone was nervous.
Yeah. As my mum said, she said, why would I air my dirty laundry in public?
Yeah.
So it took them a while to get to terms with things, my parents, but they're on board now, and my parents are probably my biggest supporters now. So it's
great.
It's amazing how people can really change their perceptions. And my mum really had a long journey to go. I thought she'd really understand, actually, and she actually found it the hardest, and she probably cried for about a year solidly after I told her.
Wow.
And it really took a long time to get her to understand that actually what I was doing wasn't going to be a hindrance on my life. It wasn't going to ostracize me. It was actually going to be the opposite. It was going to help me to feel like I had a place in this world.
Yeah.
And again, she had no understanding of trans issues, so I had to go visit her, show her YouTube videos of people who looked a bit like me, who started their transition, and eventually she understood. But in her mind, the only other trans person she knew or could think about was Eddie Izzard, and she thought that I was going to look like Eddie Izzard for some reason. And it's just, I guess people's understanding is very limited sometimes.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Well, you think like our parents and our families. You think, well, surely they must have noticed. Surely they must have seen something in us that they're thinking, maybe something's not. Maybe we need to look
as a
into
child, surely.
But my parents were the same, really. Yeah, they were like going, oh right, okay, and then give them a leaflet, some photos. Yeah, there you go. That's what I look like normally.
Totally. I don't know about you, but I was seen as the real troublemaker in my family. Because,
were you?
Yeah, because I wouldn't conform. My nana used to make these very frilly dresses, and they'd get more elaborate every year. And and my sister's 2 years older, and my mum used to dress us very similarly. Often we'd have the skirts or the dresses, particularly on formal occasions. And I don't want to say, because obviously clothing, it doesn't make you a man or a woman, does it really? But I kind of knew from an early age that I really didn't like to wear the tights and the dress as a bridesmaid at 2, and going from there, it just felt really, really odd to me, and I didn't feel comfortable. So, that was.
The rejection of these things is the one thing I noticed. It's not so much of where I was going, but what I absolutely didn't want. And as I got older, there was more and more things in the pile of things I don't want, and there was less and less things in the things I do want. So it was sort of a jump to get into that other side and see a new life for myself.
That's so true. I think because we live in this type of world where it's not geared up really specifically for people like us. We learn who we are by what we're not. So we try things on. I tried on the dresses, don't like those. And went from there. So it's funny, isn't it?
It is strange.
I think that series really started a conversation with the nation at that point. I mean, there was just nothing around like that. I know there were documentaries before that, but it was kind of the first time they'd taken a random bunch of people and just thrown them into a house, and that it was quite a long series as well because it's 4 episodes. So that was interesting because I think that at the start of your transition, there's a lot going on, isn't there? And I feel that often people will choose that opportunity to kind of thrust themselves into, rather than just focusing on the transition, they'll go and do some media type stuff, or they'll be part of a documentary. And it's tricky because I think at that point you're still trying to find yourself, you're still learning certain vocabulary, and so I don't know if I necessarily should have been involved with a show that big at that point, because I was, trying to explain who I was to my parents, and they still weren't understanding. And there were so many aspects of that documentary that I felt quite sad about, that I wasn't represented in the right way, and I wasn't allowed to talk about being non-binary either. So that was a tricky one.
Okay.
So it's almost like I was thrust into the public eye, but they didn't really fully know who I was, and although we all had a shared experience with the edit, as they decided to focus on certain people's stories and so on. So with me, they weren't really sure what to do. They're like, oh, maybe your story's your art, and so they filmed me for a few days going around to different galleries and getting mispronounced and and talking about how I felt, and then they just scrapped that because that wasn't that exciting. And,
Okay.
And Lewis, who's on the show, who we ended up setting up My Generation with, he was desperate to get his top surgery, and so was I as well. But we had a party for him, to raise money for his top surgery.
I remember.
So it was interesting. I was glad to be part of it, but that was the catalyst for me to really decide after that to cut out the middlemen and start making films myself through My Generation.
That makes
so
total
without
sense.
My Trans Summer, we wouldn't have My Generation.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot to be thankful for. And of course, I ended up making the kids book with Sarah, who's part of the show, and Lewis is one of my best friends, and we work all the time on films and editing, and I'm so glad to have him in my life. So, it changed my life forever in some ways.
Those collaborations are great that you've got off the back of that, and I do remember watching it, and you did seem very vulnerable, all of you really, and honestly, it felt like a bit of a worry when I was watching it. I was thinking, is everybody okay? Because it did seem quite raw. Yeah. And also at that time as well, I was not far into my own transition, so it sort of came along at a similar time. So it was very relatable for me at the time. I sort of felt like I was in a similar place, and seeing that sort of bounce back at me was good. It was positive, but it sort of unsettled me a little bit at the same time, because I wanted there to be a good reception to it, I guess, and I wanted people to see and appreciate this is who I was as well, So.
And it did feel, somewhere between 2011 and 2015, it felt like actually we were heading somewhere, we were making progress, and then 2015 was like the Time magazine with Laverne Cox on the front cover, and saying this is the tipping point, and we were like, thank goodness for that. Actually, it's going to be all
it's going to
peaches and cream from now on.
I've got that cover up on my in our wall in our hall. Yeah. I got that Time cover. I've got that up there. Yeah, and we put it up there, and it still makes me smile every time I see it. But I think that was the cover. Yeah. And then after that, it started getting a little bit wobbly, didn't it?
That's right. But I mean, I think in recent years we've been able to have more conversations about being non-binary, for example, which is a whole new thing. Which I think even within the trans community, or particularly within the trans community, I think non-binary people have really struggled to find a place within that as well. With binary trans people almost being threatened by the fact that they fought so hard to really be respected as the gender that they say they are or that they know they are, and the non-binary people come in and go,
come along.
Well, actually,
just stir this up a little
exactly.
bit.
You're going to change things. You can be male, female. You can be both. You can be neither, and
absolutely.
That's okay too.
Yeah.
As I define as non-binary as well, but my presentation is very masculine, and I share a lot of experiences with binary trans men as well, because I'm on the same hormones and I'm heading down the same path with surgery too. But it's interesting, isn't it? It's really hard to explain non-binary identities to people if you don't identify as non-binary.
Well, I guess so. But it's having the conversation and just making the realization that it's just when you referring to anybody that you don't know, the pronouns are there, aren't they? So it's why it's difficult for people to make that leap. I don't know.
Sure, and of course, not all non-binary people use they them. They might use he or she or any combination of things. Or all pronouns. So and it's also worth recognizing that non-binary people, it's not a new and it's not a fad. Obviously, it's something that has existed in the world for a very long time in indigenous cultures. If we look back at those, there's an acknowledgement or a recognition of something other than male and female, which I think has been thrust upon many cultures, and many countries have been forced to change what they had existing, and they swapped out whatever religion they had for Christianity, and then put in men and women, and it's there's a lot of damage I think that's been done over the years.
It's getting those histories back and just updating the language all the time, isn't it? Once you've got the language, once you've got the words, then it frees up so much, doesn't it? It's the same with feminism, wasn't it? That first, second wave. Once the language, the words appeared, it's like, this is how I feel, this is a describer of me.
That's so true.
And it's the same with the trans. It's like 10 years ago, like nobody knew what a trans person was, did they really? Do you know what I mean? It was like, we weren't on the map at all, but now there's trans people, and now we're talking about non-binary identities and other identities as well. It's all very recent. Yeah, it seems,
Definitely.
And to us, we're on board with that because that's how we identify.
For sure.
And it feels like we talk about it a lot, and it's and it's perfectly normal to us, isn't it? But
absolutely,
to a wider demographic, I guess, you just have to just keep plugging away.
That's right. And there's people like you and I who are really happy to speak about who we are. And I haven't always been like that. I had to go through I had to wade through so much guilt and shame about who I was to get to this point. But there's a huge batch of people or group of trans people who, quite rightly so, just want to get on with life and be who they are, and it's nobody's business other than their doctor or their partner as to what equipment they have or what issues they have going on. And I absolutely respect that. But I think that's also maybe why we're still trying to have conversations about trans issues, because of the invisibility aspect. And I think that of course black trans women are probably the most vulnerable members of our community, and they're often the most talked about as well, the most fetishized and the most hated. And I think that the issue with trans masculine people is our invisibility as well. So that's interesting that we're seeing more people come out, and we see more trans actors these days, and it's always a good thing.
I think people. I think like the wider society is always surprised that it's almost like a 50-50 split, isn't it? Like trans men, trans women. People always seem to be surprised because it's always like the trans women that seem to have had like the visibility. Historically, I don't know. People are just obsessed with sort of trans women. I don't know what it is, but it's like the trans guys. Come on, give them some attention. So off the back of that, then. So All About Trans as an organisation. So you do a lot of work with them, don't you?
Yes.
They work to seek sort of better representation of trans people in the media, and by doing that, they get trans people to sort of buddy up with media professionals and sort of have someone for them to sort of bounce off, isn't it? To get better representation, and through that made quite a lot of sort of like really sort of powerful sort of trans speakers, really, because like we were saying before, like about like not wanting to speak out previously, it gave a lot of people a lot of confidence, doesn't it, to speak out and be more involved in the media.
Totally true. I think that All About Trans has been doing great work behind the scenes. They're kind of like, just whispering in people's ears and helping to make things happen. And we need an organisation like that. If you want to check out the website, it's allabouttrans.org.uk, I think, and they've been around for about 9 years, I think, since 2011 or 12, and I've had so many interactions with them, and we've gone to the Sun newspaper a few times as well, and I remember I was sitting in the room with Isla Holdham, who's an RAF pilot, and Dr. Kate Stone, who's an incredible scientist. And we were in that room, and both of these trans women have had front page Sun headlines about them, which they really didn't like. I mean, with Isla Holdham, they made some sort of crack about a chopper because she was a RAF pilot with Prince William, and with Dr. Kate Stone, she was riding a horse, I think, and she was knocked off her horse around Christmas time, and she ended up in a coma. And while she was in a coma, they found out she was a trans woman, and they made some big comment about that, outed her in the press, and it was just unnecessary. And so they were both talking about that in that room, and those gatekeepers, obviously incredibly important people, and they actually found those articles at the time, and they did something that completely unexpected. They removed them. Wow. And they said, we're really sorry about that. And it's a huge crime to remove a link, that's completely embedded everywhere. But they did it. And that's the power of being able to go in and just chat to someone and say, look, this happened. It's not really okay. And this is the reasons why. And that's, I think being reasonable can actually really get you a long way. And I think people are perfectly entitled to feel angry and upset about how they're treated. But I think there's also... there's a place for kind of taking that anger and being able to really not let it overtake you, and being able to find a way to work with people.
Absolutely, because a lot of these organisations, they're big organisations, aren't they? So it's a lot to do with the culture of the organisation, and that goes all the way through the organisation. So to be able to meet with every tier of person within that, especially if it's in the media, and you've got the writers, the producers, but then you've got various other staffers around. It's the whole culture, isn't it? And just to engage positively. A lot of the people in these organisations won't be aware of any of these things that have happened, or any of the bad press and negativity, will they? So
that's right.
To get that culture and that buddy system, and to actually have a human face. Yeah.
Exactly, it helps a lot, I think. And I mean, I think the British press, the tabloid press, is probably the worst in the world, and we've really noticed that. I think Transmedia Watch is also documenting all the negative press, and they do like a tally of it. And I think the worst is usually on a Sunday for some reason. I'm not really sure why. And it is horrific, and I think a lot of people who are not trans get their information about trans people from other people who are not trans. So I think that's the issue. We need more trans people involved in the media as writers and creators and so on, because there'll be less chance for people to mess it up or have that perspective that isn't quite helping the trans movement. But All About Trans doing great work, and also it's worth mentioning that they helped to implement Boy Meets Girl, the BBC comedy with Rebecca Root. That was a huge deal because it was on a Saturday night, and it was for a mainstream audience.
Yeah, my mum loved it.
Did she?
Yeah, my mum absolutely loved it. Yeah, and thinking that's that show, not for everyone. I guess it's quite a broad show, wasn't it? But to have that as a central theme. And for it to go out, sort of like, I don't know, midweek, 8 o'clock, whatever. To all the mums,
Yeah, we need that, don't we? We need that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been watching. Rebecca Root's been in the Queen's what's the name on Netflix? Gambit. Yeah. It's such a great show.
I actually forgot Rebecca Root was in it, and I was watching the first
episode.
I was like, oh, it's Rebecca.
Yeah, she is.
And she plays like this kooky kind of nurse, doesn't she?
Yeah. She pops up in all sorts, doesn't she?
She does. She does. Yeah. Shout out to Rebecca Root.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of positive stuff to come out of that. Really, there's been lots of positive interactions with the soap operas and developing soap characters, and then there's been trans people going into interactions and actually becoming, like actors themselves, like Rebecca Root. Because I did an interaction
with Ash
at Hollyoaks with Rebecca Root, so I was there with her. So
cool.
Obviously, making links and forming it.
That's right. We've been working with Hollyoaks recently as well about some new storylines.
Great.
And EastEnders, of course, they did a shout out, and everybody and the friends turned up for a role in EastEnders, and Riley ended up getting that, but unfortunately it was quite short lived. So it's a shame. I think perhaps they should re-look at that, because I think soaps I mean, they're quite generic and quite, you know, they can be quite dramatic, can't they? I mean, that's the whole point of a soap. I was watching Hollyoaks the other day and I couldn't believe what was going on.
It's so over the top, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so over the top.
But in many ways, it does help to normalize things. I hate that word as well, normalize.
Yeah.
But it just helps people to kind of see, you know, Annie Wallace as the headmistress, for example, or Ash playing Matty Barton in Emmerdale. And it's huge, you know, because people just want to see themselves represented, first of all. And I think it makes waves of change for people's just general understanding of trans people, just seeing us as human beings.
Yeah, that's very positive. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there with, you know, with British television and the whole American wave as well, with shows like Pose and Sense8 and Orange is the New Black. You know, I mean, all of that was massive. That was huge. You know. That's
right, and also Jen Richards doing Her Story with that, I thought was amazing.
That was amazing. The web series, Her Story on YouTube was really good. Wasn't it? It was like a four-parter, wasn't it?
It's just really nicely shot, beautiful. Really nicely made, and you could tell that it was written. You know, it was written by a trans person and a cis lesbian as well, and you can just tell, can't you, when something's just made from people who just understand.
And Jen Richards was also in, which I thought was really beautiful, Tales from the City, the new Tales from the City.
That's right.
Playing, is it Mrs. Madrigal? Madrigal, the character.
The younger Mrs. Madrigal.
Yeah, the younger Mrs. Madrigal. So it's all to do with, you know, the sort of the gay rights movement and sort of being married to a police officer and all the conflict there, and it was really, really fantastic.
Absolutely.
That whole episode,
Yeah, and I love acting as well, and I have to say I almost got on the L word recently for being a trans actor there. I went for Transparent as well. They're going to have a trans actor in that.
Wow.
Tales of the City, I went for Jake. EastEnders, I obviously went for that too.
Yeah.
So I'm always the bridesmaid, never the bride, but that's fine. I kind of get to like.
Well, it seems
place.
from like seeing like other people in these shows that, you know, they get there in the end. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the right part is there. It's waiting, isn't it? It's waiting. Is there going to be like a golden part there?
Exactly.
Slip straight in.
That's right.
I'll be rooting for you.
Thank you.
Fab. Well, okay. So let's talk about Homotopia then.
Yeah.
You've been involved in a few things. You've been involved in the Queer Art Crawl. Have you managed to get around the Queer Art Crawl?
I'm going to check it out just after this, before we head back down south. But the art crawl, can you tell me a little bit more about it as well?
Well, the Queer Art Crawl, we're queer in the city. So we've got public artworks around Liverpool by queer artists. And they're dotted round. So there's a trail, there's a map. You follow it round, goes through the Baltic, through the city centre, up to the cathedral, up to the waterfront as well. And it's really fantastic to see, just sort of, you know, big scale queer art. I mean, yours is a series of statements, isn't it? So
yeah, it's very basic. It's just wording, really. It just, you know, says the obvious, like trans women are women as well, and.
I think it's great. I mean, it's just so direct. You know, people walking by, you know, they're just going to glance at. I mean, the statements, sort of. So is it non-binary is.
It is non-binary because we've kind of moved on from being valid. You know, I think. So now people are saying, don't say non-binary is valid. Say non-binary is non-binary. It sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? But I suppose. Next to trans women are women and trans men are men, I think hopefully it'll make sense to people as well. But
it's very beautiful, and you know, and it really does shout at you as you walk by. So like anybody that's in any doubt, you know, go, what is this? What is all this stuff? You know, that shouts. It's in your face, and it's exactly what you need, isn't it?
Totally.
It's really good to see.
I was going to ask you about this as well, because as a trans artist, do you feel conflicted? I feel like sometimes, because obviously trans artists don't need to make stuff that's about being trans, and I feel like the stuff that I do make about being trans is quite obvious. Like it's quite there's no real depth to it in some ways. If you know
I think that's very good.
But
I think that's great. No, I think that's great. You need the words. You need to see these statements. I think you know, you could be too abstract, and you know, and people just pass by and not really see it. You know, you need to be direct. Yeah. And I think a lot of what you do, you know, with screen printing. I mean, that's, you know, like the history of screen printing, I guess. I mean, people are knocking out posters, and it's there to be viewed, and when it's gone, and you move on, you do the next one, don't you? So I guess, you know, that has roots there, doesn't it?
Very
You know,
much
as,
so.
as protest art. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. Yeah.
you know,
Sure. You can just whack off a whole bunch of signs, and then everyone can have a shared message with that. Yeah, it's great. I love screen printing. It's such a wonderful medium, and I got into that about I would say about 10 or 11 years ago as well, and I ended up doing an adult education course at the University of Brighton, and it really changed my life, because around that time I was just coming out of a really abusive relationship actually, and I almost hit my rock bottom. I think before I started my transition, just a few years before that, I was really having a dark time, and I got involved with this. I was already miserable, and then I got into this horrific relationship, and then the thing that brought me out of it was screen printing. You know, I started this course, and the person I was with even tried to destroy the stuff I'd made for this course as well, and you know, but I was able to just kind of start focusing on the art, and it was that really saved me. Yeah. So I'm really grateful for screen printing.
Isn't it? Very powerful thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely is.
It doesn't kill us, makes us stronger, right?
Oh yeah, I think so. The queer art crawl as well. There is, if you've not seen it, there's a really good audio and video of Roger Hill and Felix Mufti Wright. They do a little walk around, and they do yours and they do mine.
Yes,
and a few others around there as well.
I think
which is really fantastic. It's always amazing to see what other people see in your work. You know. Yeah. Because you produce stuff and you just put it out there, and sometimes don't give it another thought, do you? But
that is so true.
It's always interesting. Sort of, you know, even years down the line when people sort of talk back at you about what the sort of the stuff you've done, you know, it's fascinating to see what people see in it.
It really is, yeah, definitely, because I think you're right. You can kind of get really focused on something, and then when you're done with it, you're like, it's done with now.
Well, I think as a creative, that's what you do, isn't it? You just enjoy the process, and it's almost like you want someone else to deal with it. Then. Yeah. It's like, oh, I've done that. Can you sell it or put that up or put it somewhere? Just do something with it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so true.
So you did a screen printing workshop live on Friday.
Yeah, it was really exciting actually, because it's something that I've wanted to do for a while, and it's an opportunity to take something from online and bring it into real life. Yeah. So, and especially I think it's quite poignant this year, because we've been mostly living our lives online, doing all these Zoom chats with people and so on. And I think that obviously it's wonderful to have online stuff, but I just thought it'd be really cool to kind of bring that out and show a physical representation of support for trans people. So with Homotopia having such a great name, I thought Transtopia is a good focus for that. And people got to talk about what they thought Transtopia would be like for trans people or for themselves. You know, what the world would look like as a better place. So it's quite a simple message again, I think. And
simple message, effective though. You had lots of people getting involved. Transtopia, you can still get on that, by the way. So if you want to send any messages or any thoughts, then get on the Transtopia hashtag.
That's right. Just check out the hashtag on Twitter and so on, and it's all there.
So that's good. So that was a very positive thing. But you were printing onto J.K. Rowling. Books,
yes, that's right.
Pages,
I mean, just some old books I'd lying around. You know,
which book? Was it any particular book?
I think I had a few different books actually.
They're your books?
They weren't my books. They were actually donated to me from a trans girl that didn't want them anymore, so she sent them to me. Okay. So I think that she was delighted that I was able to turn something that, unfortunately, you know, it's a bit of a heartbreaking thing, you know, to discover that your heroes are bigoted, and you know, with J.K. Rowling, it's been kind of a shock this year, I think, for many people. And my partner Al and I were both on the same literary agency as J.K. Rowling, so we had this big separation this year, and it felt like taking on Voldemort. You know, it was really, really hardcore, and like a David and Goliath kind of situation that we ended up losing, really, because we had to leave our agency. We don't have a new literary agency. We've got 2 books that are coming out next year that are still on that agency, but they removed us from the website quick, so I have no idea whether what kind of support they can give for those trans-based books, because one's a trans pride colouring book, and the other one's a workbook, a companion to the Trans Teen Survival Guide.
Great, oh great.
So, I mean, we were so excited about that, and also being part of a new, bigger literary agency. We were so delighted to be on the same, you know, platform as someone as huge as J.K. Rowling. So there's been a huge heartbreak, I think, this year for myself and my partner, we're still dealing with that right now, I think, and I've got the books in. They're going to come out in May, June next year.
Okay.
So that'll be really good, and we'll be doing the best we can to promote.
Well, the Trans Teen Survival Guide is great. I've read chunks of it, and you know, I'm not a teenager, but but I found it quite helpful. I found it very reflective, just of where I was at, and you know, and the struggles I've been through myself. So. And you know, I'm not aware that there's anything like that out there. It's very comprehensive and reassuring, and it's delivered in such a sort of you know,
like a
sort of like a big sibling kind of. Well, do you know what I mean? It's like the arm you need. You know, I think it's a really beautiful thing, and it seems like the feedback and the reviews of it have been really, really good as well. So
yes.
So here there's a companion book.
That's right. So
like a workbook is really exciting.
Yes, and the workbook's really fun because I got to do loads of illustrations for it. And the issue, I mean, with the Trans Teen Survival Guide, I felt like it was quite restricting in many ways by having the teen aspect to it. So we've actually taken that off for the workbook. Okay. So it's the Trans Survival Workbook now. Yeah. And the reason we had the Trans Teen Survival Guide as the name in the first place is there was a very popular Tumblr site, which of the same name, that our friend Chrissy used to help to answer questions on. And it was so popular, they had like a backlog of about 5,000 questions or something, where they were just answering constantly. And obviously, it's a book that I wish had existed when I was growing up too. So just thought, let's just make this book. And it was really, really nice to be able to do that. But unfortunately, Chrissy died by suicide and wasn't able to see the launch of it, and we dedicated the book to her. So I miss Chrissy so much, and you know, it's just incredibly sad that because she helped so many people as well. You know, she was such a giver, and she had a great YouTube site where she was helping people with all sorts of stuff, like including tucking and you know, everything. She was just a real positive source, and I really, really miss her. So.
Well, it seems like she's still helping people, then, isn't she, through you? So
for sure.
Know, and like I say, the book is really good. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Thank you very much.
So I look for the companion book's going to be really good, really exciting. Yeah. So My Genderation was your film project. So I know you're really passionate about this. You've produced like 100 films now. You've been, is it all over the UK or?
Yeah, mostly in the UK. Yeah, we actually had the opportunity to go to Russia, for example, a few years ago. So we were invited to a queer event in St. Petersburg. Yeah. And we weren't even sure if they were going to let us in the country. But I think both of our, the name, so my full name is Raphael Francis Fox Fisher. So they couldn't really Google, you know, if they Googled that name, I don't think much would come up. So I got away with that. And Owl, of course, is Icelandic, and I mean, they could Google that too, but it would be in Icelandic, so they might not understand what's going on. So we got into the country, and we were picked up at the airport, and we spent some time there, you know, giving a talk, and we started to film, you know, people who were living within a very different system to ours, and we were learning a lot about what certain issues they had going on. And I think that even since then, things have become slightly more difficult for people to transition. And they were basically explaining that, you know, they were, at that point, they were able to access hormones, for example, not via a prescription, but just by going somewhere and getting them. And the more themselves they were becoming, the less their ID was actually representing who they were. You know, so they were able to become themselves, but then they were not able to get employment and so on. And you know, it's just a horrible situation for them that they had to choose between one or the other. And so we were really delighted to be able to go and do that. And we did make some film. We made a film when we were there with people. And again, we're quite used to making stuff on a budget of nothing. So I feel, as a punk, you know, who originally grew up making fanzines myself, I'm just totally into utilizing what's around me and just making it work. So I feel really happy actually that I, you know, 10 years ago, technology was advanced enough to be able to buy some secondhand equipment and just go for it, you know. And I learned as I was going, so I've spent 10 years learning how to make film, I think, and I feel like I'm just getting to a point where I'm actually quite happy with the edit, and I feel like I can do it justice, because I think when people, you know, with these contributors, with these wonderful trans people that we filmed, you know, everything from a 5-year-old trans girl to an 80-something-year-old trans woman, you know, that we have such a broad-ranging community, and I think that when people don't see themselves represented, because we are such a broad community, it can feel really disheartening. So, and filmmaking is incredibly addictive too. So once you start, it's really hard to stop. And we started making documentary films back in the time when there wasn't a huge amount of films out there. But now there's like, you know, Cosmopolitan making stuff, there's Starbucks doing a Mermaids, you know, trans-related ad, and, you know, we've got a lot more available. So I think our interest now is in historical fiction, for example, the Inverness or bus trip that I've got to tell you about.
All right.
So there was a group of trans people back in the mid-70s that went on a road trip up to Inverness in Scotland.
Okay.
And they went to go see the head of an asylum up there called Dr. Whittet, and he had sent them an invitation, just one person, and she'd assembled a group of people to go up.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a pride event for them to like be all together in a group of people. And they went to go see a doctor who, he basically said that he was going to help them at a time when, you know, people were not being helped or supported. And he said, look, off the record, I can help you with hormones, I can help to assemble a surgical team. And they went up to see him, and he put on a tea party for them. He gave them tea and cake. And, you know, these stories are just so incredible. So after I took part in My Trans Summer, I had lots of people get in touch with me. And one of them is someone who we're going to call Nemo. It's not his actual name. Okay. He's a very stealth, older trans guy. And he got in touch and he started telling me stories about his life. And so we'd meet up at Wetherspoons, and he would just tell me these stories about him living kind of near here. I'm not going to say exactly where, but a city near here.
Okay.
And he started to tell me about this story about going up to Inverness to meet this doctor. And then Christine Burns got in touch with me about doing a chapter in Trans Britain.
Yeah.
And when I read the other chapters from the book, great book if you get a chance to read it, by the way, one of the chapters was by Carol Steele, and it was her version of that story. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, okay, so we've got a few people that are still around, that still remember what happened, and we've got to find a way to record that story, because, you know, as you know, a lot of our histories are oral, and, you know, when the people unfortunately go, you know, that their stories go too. And I think as trans people, it is insightful and important for us to honor those of us who, you know, the older generations that really, as you say, how did they know who they were when there was nothing?
How did they know?
It's incredible.
How did they know? Yeah,
so we're hoping we're actually fundraising right now, GoFundMe/Inverness or Bust, and people can check out. Yeah, check out the promo with that and see more of that story. And Stephen Whittle is another person that was part of that batch of people to go up.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so
this is brilliant.
It's amazing, and we've actually written a fictional script as well.
I was going to say, this could,
That's the next one after that. So documentary first.
You can see this
totally.
In development, can't you?
Yeah, and we get to do all that cool 70s, 70s kind of aesthetic, and and actually Ford got in touch after seeing, you know, the company Ford, after seeing the trailer that we put out, and they said, you know, if you want a vehicle for that, then we're happy to donate something. So they're going to give us a Nugget, which is the new electric vehicle to go up on a road trip back on the same journey that they took.
So how many of the original 11 is it?
Yeah,
how many of the original 11 have you spoken to?
I think it was about 8 to 12 people, because there were a few trips that they did up, so the initial batch was probably about 8 people. So of that, I know 3 that are still around, as we talked about, Carol, Nemo and Stephen. There's probably others, but they lost contact with them, so I'm not sure what's going on for them. I know a few of the people originally came down from like the Isle of Skye, for example, and other parts in Scotland, and they all met up at this hostel just outside of Inverness, and they said it was a pretty incredible experience, actually.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
I know, so
cool.
The
histories that you know, they're there, aren't they? You know, it takes, you know, people like yourself to sort of uncover them and sort of, you know, facilitate them so they can come to the surface like this, you know.
For sure.
It's a lot of work, you know. I love the history. We had a fantastic archive of April Ashley at the museum. The Liverpool Museum has done some amazing stuff, and it was Homotopia, the April Ashley archive, and that ran, and it was so popular. And yeah, you know, I think the whole city got a lot from that, really.
That's
like
really
the,
cool,
know.
And I think it's just such a wonderful thing to be able to acknowledge April while she's still around as well, and not just posthumously.
Yeah. I know, she kept popping up to Liverpool.
Amazing, amazing.
With her beautifully coiffured hair.
Exactly, that's how I imagine her. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's so glamorous back in the day,
She's
wasn't
incredibly glamorous, yeah. April Ashley, everybody.
Legend.
April Ashley, legend. Oh, fabulous. So you and Al are both creatives.
Yes, that's right.
And you're set up, you got the studios at home?
Yes, so we have, I have like a room that I've dedicated to my screen printing, and I obviously do a lot of editing of films there too, and Al has a smaller room. I don't know how that worked out, but I guess I've got my big plan chest in my room, so I get that room. But yeah, Al's got a
screen printing, you need a lot more room.
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
You say, anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But yeah, Al's got a really good setup with a couple of 2 screens and a really nice PC.
2 screens,
yeah, Al does a lot of gaming these days as well, which is how they chill out. So they do that, and Al writes a lot of articles, so they're kind of more of a writer, a journalist.
Yeah.
They help to apply for funding as well, and so Al's been integral to the advancement of My Generation, and Al joined us about 4 years ago when we got together. We met in Italy, actually, so it's kind of a bit of a global love story with someone from England, someone from Iceland meeting in Italy. Yes. And you know, it was just kind of an instant connection. You know, it's amazing, really, because I wasn't looking for love, and I suppose that's when that's when it hits you. So
yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice to see you sort of like a team in a complete sense of the word. I have an affinity because my partner Jess is also very creative. Jess is a programmer.
Cool.
So we've got this. You know, we sometimes collaborate on work together as well, which is really beautiful. Really but we've got a similar setup at home, although probably a bit less room, I don't know, but we have a similar setup, you know, working one room and the other, shouting through, and
brilliant.
You know, having that
talking
bounce
online.
off, and it's just great just having that other person just to bounce things off like constantly. It really is a great way to work, isn't it?
It really is, and I don't know about you, but I didn't really know what I was looking for in a partner, but by being with someone else who's trans, and despite us having a completely different trans experience, you know, Al was assigned male at birth, and you know, grew up in Iceland in a cold country, and I was assigned female at birth, and I grew up in Saudi Arabia, actually, in a really hot country. So born in London, but then moved out there for my childhood, and you know, and meeting together, it's like we have such a deep understanding of each other. We never have to explain dysphoria, for example, or you know, how we're feeling, and it's just I feel such a connected bond with someone else who's trans, and it's really great.
Yeah, I feel the same. Me and Jess are very close, and I feel like we're getting close all the time. Jess started a transition later than me, so I transitioned, you know, 10 years ago, but Jess is more recent, and we're sort of like going through all of it again. You know, Jess is asking me for advice and support and help and things, and I'm trying to remember what I did. Like, I was thinking, it seems like a long time ago. And things go unsaid, don't they? They don't need to be, because you have an affinity, and you just get it, don't you?
Totally.
You just get it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing when you get all the trans fam in a room together. You know, people just get it.
Yeah. Despite our different experiences, and despite being, you know, we might vary in age, race, and so on, but there is still that connection, isn't there?
It always feels very warm, and I forget sometimes, like being sort of out of the trans bubble, I guess. You know, you get sometimes you just get like an exhaustion. You know, it's like a trans exhaustion. It's like it's so tiring. You know, like especially with the media and the news cycles and everything else. You think, you know, and you forget, and you want to pull away from it. But then when you do things like this, you know, or you do trans events and you get together, it just feels great, and it just really energizes you.
Totally.
It's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You've kind of touched upon that you know, burnout is a really big thing in our community.
How do you deal with that? Because I mean, you know,
I've hit the wall quite a few times. I have to say, you know, I feel like I've been non-stop for the past 10 years since I thrust myself into the public eye with My Trans Summer. It's just been endless, and for the first 4 or 5 years of that, I really I said yes to mostly everything that I was invited to, you know, whether it was a panel chat or whatever, because I really felt that it was just so important to be able to be out there and helping to make changes. You know, but I think as soon as you start to think that you're irreplaceable, you know, that's when you really need to stop, because of course the world goes on. There's enough people doing the work out there now. There's people that are stepping up, and there's younger people that have more enthusiasm, more energy to do things. So absolutely, I'm really happy to, you know, I'd be happy just there's different forms of activism, isn't there? And we don't have to be on the front lines.
Exactly.
We can be back there making art.
Exactly.
We could be, editing
you
films.
You can't do everything. You can't be everything. You
No.
know, there's a little period when I was getting asked to do more and more bits, and part of me just didn't want to do it really. You know, I
Right.
did a little bit of media and things like that, and although I liked chatting, I never felt particularly comfortable, and there was like a lot of anxiety sort of in the process and things like that. And I was thinking, do you know what? I don't think I want to do this.
Yeah.
You know, so. I did pull away from a lot of that, and I've actually been much happier. And like you say, there's different ways to do your thing, isn't there? You know,
Totally.
and you've got to accept that some people are just going to be better at certain things than you, and just let them get on with it and let them, you know, run with it. You know,
Yeah,
so.
exactly right. And I think that often with platforms, we have to, if we're invited on something, then often we have to compromise. You know, it becomes a debate. You know, and that shouldn't have to happen. And it's so rare that we do have a platform, but often it's because we're defending our right to exist, or we're responding to something in the news. And of course, the press is so fast. And it was, you know, it was saying that, you know, it's particularly. The press seems particularly fierce and horrific in the UK, and you know, the amount of times that I've woken up and had, you know, messages all over being like, oh, can you just give us a statement? Can you just respond to this thing that's happening?
Just react so fast.
Can you react?
It's like, you know, you sometimes need time to digest these things, don't you?
Yeah, and often as coming out as trans, we find we have to educate everyone around us, and that's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest, you know, I've got to that stage in my life now where I'm quite cynical. I used to be very optimistic, you know, back in the day, but I'm a bit more of an old cynic these days, and some of it I'm just like, nah. I'm just exhausted.
Totally.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Fabulous. So lockdown, how's that been for you? You been all right?
You know, at the start of lockdown, I think particularly because I've been quite burnt out over the years, it was almost a sense of relief where I was like, you know, there's no events happening right now, there's nowhere I have to be, I can just, because, you know, it feels like treading water a lot of the time, and so it's a chance just to kind of catch my breath and be like, actually, you know, what's life about? What's important in life? You know, and I realized it's people. You know, it's my dog. It's, you know, it's just really simple things in life. It's eating some nice food, getting a sunset. And so I was thinking, what am I doing? You know, why am I like so stressed out with all this trans stuff? You know, when you know, some people you can never convince, never change their mind. There's no point, you know, in many ways. And you know, so it's been a chance to be able to really reassess, and I think that's a good thing for anyone to do at any point.
Yeah, I think for those of us that could and were able, having that for initial sort of month or two, you know, there was a bit of good weather going on as well, wasn't there? And I think
unlike
there was
now,
a few people sort of, you know, being able to breathe a little bit and sort of reassess things, wasn't there? Which was lovely.
Yeah.
You know, for all the bad that was going on, there was positives, wasn't there?
Definitely, and it's also got me thinking about the wider world as well. You
Yeah.
know, if we're always you know, focused on trans issues, then you know, what about the planet? You know, we're not going to have a planet. You know, at some point, I'm thinking actually really of switching gears to being more of a human rights activist or an earth activist, because, you know, I care about this planet, I care about animals, I care about people, and you know, I can't stand the fact that we're just infighting and we're polluting the planet. You know, it's so toxic, and you know, when actually, you know, we can do something right now to make it a more sustainable planet. And
if we weren't arguing about, like, you know, the small stuff, you know, maybe we could take on the bigger picture, couldn't we?
Exactly. Yeah.
And with the election, there was an election. I don't know whether
anyone knows about this.
But with the election, you know, it shouldn't be as big a deal as it is, but you know, it's a pretty big deal. And we've got someone now in the White House that's supportive on sort of LGBT issues and environmental issues as well, which could be a bit of a game changer, because obviously, you know, where America goes, the rest of us lead, don't we? Follow.
Yeah.
Lead, follow. Right, well, fabulous. Well, thanks for that.
Thank you so
much. I really
much.
enjoyed that.
Me too.
You enjoyed that?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you
thanks
very
much, Fox.